The universe should be buzzing with conversation, yet we hear only silence. This profound quiet is the core of a startling idea called the zoo hypothesis. It proposes Earth is not alone but intentionally set apart, a protected planet in a vast cosmic sanctuary. By the end of this exploration, you will see our place in the cosmos through an entirely new lens, one that transforms our solitude from a mystery into a potential revelation. We will uncover why advanced civilizations might choose to watch from the shadows and examine what specific achievement could finally make them step into the light. This journey reframes our entire existence. What does it truly mean to be a watched species? The silence is absolute. Across billions of stars in our galaxy alone, across the trillions of galaxies spinning in the void, we have detected no engineered signals, no cosmic engineering projects, no visitors. We listen, and the universe offers only the natural static of stars and gas. This profound and puzzling quiet is the heart of what scientists call the Great Silence. It stands in direct opposition to everything we think we know about probability. Given the staggering number of Earth-like worlds orbiting in the habitable zones of Sun-like stars, the universe should be teeming with life, and some fraction of that life should have become intelligent, spacefaring civilizations. The math screams that we should not be alone, yet all our instruments whisper that we are. This glaring contradiction has a name, born from a simple, devastating question asked over lunch one day in the summer of 1950. The physicist Enrico Fermi, amidst a casual conversation about flying saucers, looked up and posed the question that would define a field of study: where is everybody? Fermi's paradox, as it came to be known, is deceptively simple. It cuts to the core of our cosmic loneliness. If advanced civilizations are likely, their absence requires an explanation. The initial scientific responses were sobering, even grim. Perhaps the development of complex, intelligent life is astronomically rare, a fluke of chemistry that happened only once. Or perhaps the path from intelligence to a star-spanning civilization is littered with existential traps, hurdles so severe that no species ever clears them all. The most common proposed trap is self-destruction, the idea that technological advancement inevitably leads to a civilization's end, whether through environmental collapse, catastrophic war, or technologies that spiral out of control. This perspective frames the Great Silence as a cosmic graveyard, a warning written in the stars about a fate that may await us all. But as haunting as these explanations are, they feel incomplete. They assume a universe where every civilization, without exception, either never arises or inevitably vanishes. It is a story of universal failure. This leaves room for another, far more intriguing possibility. What if the silence is not a sign of absence or extinction, but a sign of presence? What if the answer to Fermi's haunting question is not that everybody is gone, but that they are here, and they are choosing not to speak? This shifts the paradox from a tragedy to a mystery, and it opens the door to a theory that transforms our planet from a lonely rock into something far more special, a protected preserve in a vast and quiet cosmic zoo. The silence needed a new kind of explanation, one that moved beyond graveyards and toward gardens. This shift arrived in 1973, courtesy of a radio astronomer named John Ball. While many of his peers were searching the skies for signals, Ball turned his attention inward to the logic of the silence itself. He proposed a thought experiment so elegant it reframed the entire conversation. What if the reason we hear nothing is not because other civilizations cannot speak, but because they have chosen not to? In a landmark paper, Ball gave this idea a name and a powerful analogy. He called it the zoo hypothesis, Imagine, he suggested, a universe where humanity is not the curator of nature preserves, but the primary exhibit, an advanced interstellar community, possessing wisdom and technology far beyond our own, might have long ago established a galactic policy of non-interference. In this view, Earth is not a lonely outpost, it is a protected wilderness area, a planet set aside for natural development. The cosmic radio silence is not emptiness, it is the respectful quiet of observers who do not wish to startle the wildlife. Ball's background was crucial. He was not just a stargazer but a thinker trained to consider systems and signals. His motivation was clear: to find a solution to Fermi's paradox that did not rely on the grim assumption of universal self-destruction. The timing of his idea was perfect, emerging in an era of growing ecological consciousness here on Earth. The very concept of creating national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, of protecting fragile ecosystems from disruptive influence, was becoming a global priority. Ball simply took that terrestrial idea and projected it onto a cosmic scale. What if we are the fragile ecosystem? What if the ultimate act of advanced ethics is to leave a developing world completely untouched, to allow its culture, its technology, and its destiny to unfold without any outside meddling? This framework transforms the great silence from a terrifying mystery into a potential protocol. It suggests a universe governed not by indifference or danger, but by a form of enlightened stewardship. The radio bands are quiet because they are being kept clear for our benefit, or perhaps for the integrity of the experiment. Suddenly, the absence of visitors is not evidence of our insignificance, but a possible sign of our profound significance. We are not abandoned, we are being given room to grow. This foundational idea from John Ball provides the first structured answer to Fermi's question that is neither tragic nor lonely. It introduces the possibility of rules, of a cosmic prime directive established by civilizations so advanced that their primary concern is the preservation of natural intelligence across the galaxy. And if such rules exist, it forces us to ask a thrilling and unsettling question. What exactly would make us ready to leave the zoo? The idea of a silent, watchful universe feels strangely familiar. Long before John Ball gave it a scientific name, this concept was already woven into our stories. Science fiction has spent decades preparing us for the possibility of the zoo hypothesis, exploring the profound ethics of contact through countless narratives. The most famous parallel is Star Trek's Prime Directive, a foundational law that forbids Starfleet from interfering with the natural development of any pre-warp civilization. It is not merely a rule about technology, it is a moral stance on the sanctity of a culture's independent journey. The crew of the Enterprise can observe, they can even marvel, but they must not reveal themselves or alter the course of history. This fictional policy mirrors the zoo hypothesis with uncanny precision, presenting non-interference not as a weakness, but as the highest expression of responsibility for a more advanced society. It suggests that true wisdom lies in knowing when not to act, in understanding that a civilization's struggles and triumphs are essential to its identity. This theme echoes far beyond the bridge of a starship. In Arthur C. Clarke's visionary novel Childhood's End, contact with an advanced species brings a swift end to human conflict and want, but it also halts our own creative and spiritual evolution. The overlords provide peace and stability, yet their presence casts a long shadow, ultimately guiding humanity toward a predetermined, transcendent fate that erases individual culture. It is a story that asks a haunting question: is protection that removes all struggle and choice truly a gift, or is it a gentler form of control? Similarly, the film Contact, based on Carl Sagan's work, presents a first message from the stars not as a simple hello, but as a complex blueprint, a test. The advanced senders do not announce their arrival, they provide instructions and wait to see if we are capable of following them. This reflects a potential real-world zoo scenario where contact is not a broadcast for all to hear, but a carefully placed key, visible only to those who have reached a specific level of technological and cooperative maturity. These stories are more than entertainment, they are cultural thought experiments. They reveal a deep-seated human understanding that growth requires autonomy, that being given all the answers can stunt the very development it aims to help. This recurring narrative prepares us to think seriously about the ethical frameworks that might govern a galactic community. If such civilizations exist, their decision to remain silent would not be born from fear or indifference, but from a hard-won ethical principle, one we ourselves are just beginning to articulate. They would have learned that the most precious thing you can offer a young intelligence is the open space to find its own way, even if that means watching quietly from a distance as it stumbles through its own adolescence. This cultural reflection shifts the zoo hypothesis from a cold astronomical theory into a deeply human story about maturity, respect, and the patience required for true growth. It makes the silence feel less like isolation and more like the respectful quiet in a classroom during a final exam, a space where you must prove you can solve the problem on your own. This principle of watchful distance points toward a foundational rule for any cosmic civilization. If the zoo hypothesis is correct, then the most advanced societies in the galaxy likely operate under a universal ethic of non-interference. This would not be a casual preference, but a strict, deeply ingrained protocol, a kind of cosmic law observed across star systems. The reasoning behind it is profound. A civilization that has survived for millions of years would have witnessed the rise and fall of countless cultures. They would understand from painful experience how fragile the early stages of a technological society can be. Direct contact, no matter how well-intentioned, could be catastrophic for a younger species. Imagine the impact of suddenly revealing that every major religion, every philosophical framework about humanity's place in the cosmos was incomplete. The sheer psychological shock could unravel the social fabric of an entire planet, triggering global conflict or a paralyzing existential crisis. There is also the danger of cultural contamination. An advanced visitor, simply by existing, would become an irresistible template. All human art, science, and ambition might suddenly pivot toward imitation, cutting short our own unique path of discovery. Our entire history would become a race to catch up to a provided blueprint, rather than an authentic journey of creating our own. We can see a scaled-down version of this ethic right here on Earth. Anthropologists studying isolated, uncontacted tribes make a conscious choice to observe from a distance, using drones or long-range photography. They do not march into the village with gifts and technology. The goal is to preserve that culture's autonomy, to allow it to evolve according to its own internal logic, free from the overwhelming influence of the outside world. The observers understand that their very presence would irrevocably change everything. In the cosmic context, we are the uncontacted tribe. The radio silence, then, is not a sign of neglect. It is the ultimate form of respect. It is the galaxy giving us the rarest gift of all, the chance to become who we are meant to be on our own terms, at our own pace. This framework transforms our solitude from a condition to be lamented into a protected space for growth, but it also raises a thrilling possibility. If this silence is a deliberate protocol, then it must have limits. There must be a threshold, a specific achievement or moment of maturity that signals we are ready for graduation. What could possibly be significant enough to make the watchers finally step forward and say hello? The most likely threshold would not be a single invention, but a fundamental shift in how we govern ourselves. A civilization capable of sustainable global peace represents a profound evolutionary step. It means we have moved beyond organizing into competing tribes and nations, and have learned to see humanity as a single, cooperative unit. This is not about the absence of conflict, but the presence of systems so resilient that they can resolve disputes without widespread violence. For a galactic observer, a species that has not mastered its own planet, that remains fractured by war and resource competition, would be seen as dangerously immature. Inviting such a civilization into a wider interstellar community would be like introducing a lit match into a room full of oxygen. The potential for catastrophic disruption would be far too high. Achieving this kind of stability demonstrates a level of collective wisdom that transcends technology. It shows we can manage the immense power our science gives us without turning it on each other. This is why the mastery of clean, abundant energy like fusion is so often cited as another potential key. A species that has solved its energy and resource scarcity has removed the primary historical driver of conflict. It proves we can provide for everyone without plundering our own world or, eventually, others. The ambition to become a multi-planetary species carries similar weight. It signals a long-term perspective, an understanding that to survive for millennia, a civilization cannot keep all its eggs in one planetary basket. This step shows foresight and a commitment to endurance, qualities any elder civilization would recognize and respect. Ultimately, the threshold is about proving we are no longer a danger to ourselves or to others. The great silence, then, transforms from a passive state into an active test. It is a cosmic filter, ensuring that only those civilizations that have achieved a certain ethical and social maturity graduate from the planetary zoo. Every war we end, every clean energy grid we build, every effort to see beyond our borders is not just progress for humanity. It is a potential answer to the silent question being asked of us from the stars. Are we ready? This reframes our entire history not as a random walk, but as a preparation. It makes our greatest challenges feel like parts of a curriculum, difficult lessons we must learn before the universe will trust us with the final exam. But if we are being observed, how could it be done without us ever noticing? The technology required would need to be so advanced it borders on magic, yet it must operate on principles we can at least begin to fathom. One compelling model is that of a passive, galaxy-wide observatory. Instead of sending massive starships that blaze across our skies, a super-civilization might deploy technology of exquisite subtlety. Imagine self-replicating probes, smaller than a grain of sand, scattered across the galaxy millions of years ago. These nanoscale observers could lie dormant in the icy debris of our solar system's own asteroid belt or the Oort cloud, a vast shell of frozen objects at our system's edge. They would awaken only periodically, using minimal energy to collect data before returning to hibernation, leaving no more trace than a natural micrometeorite. Their very design would be stealth, built from materials indistinguishable from space dust to our sensors. Even more speculative are monitoring systems that operate on principles beyond our current physics. What if observation doesn't require a physical device in our vicinity at all? A civilization that has mastered quantum entanglement or non-local sensing might be able to study Earth from across the galaxy without any intermediary technology, reading the state of our planet as effortlessly as we read a book by some means we cannot yet conceive. Closer to home, the monitoring could be woven into the fabric of our world itself. Sophisticated biosensors engineered at the molecular level could be embedded within Earth's own biosphere. They might reside in the deep ocean trenches within the geology of ancient rock formations, or even within the genetic code of common organisms, acting as living, self-sustaining recorders of planetary change. This form of observation would focus not on our radio broadcasts, but on the broader environmental signature of a civilization. They would track atmospheric chemistry, biodiversity shifts, energy output, and even the emergence of global networks. This perspective forces a dramatic shift in how we search. We stop straining to hear a deliberate message and start looking for the fingerprints of the observer. We move from scanning the stars to scrutinizing anomalies in our own cosmic backyard. It invites us to re-examine every unexplained atmospheric phenomenon, every odd radar return, every peculiar piece of space debris, not as potential visitors, but as potential monitoring artifacts. Many reports of unidentified objects could be reinterpreted not as piloted craft, but as autonomous sensor platforms performing routine maintenance or data collection, their movements appearing bizarre because their purpose is utterly alien to us. This reframes the mystery from one of contact to one of infrastructure. The question is no longer are they out there, but is their equipment already here, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to develop the eyes to see it. This recent surge of interest in unidentified anomalous phenomena presents a fascinating puzzle for our cosmic zoo scenario. On the surface, widespread reports of strange objects in our skies seem to directly contradict the idea of a silent, non-interfering observer. If the galactic caretakers are so committed to remaining hidden, why would they be seen at all, let alone with such apparent frequency? This tension forces a critical reassessment. The most logical interpretation from a strict zoo hypothesis standpoint is that true zookeepers would be fundamentally undetectable. Their monitoring technology, as we considered, would be designed for perfect stealth, operating at scales or with principles we cannot perceive. Therefore, the vast majority of UAP sightings that are investigated turn out to have conventional explanations, atmospheric phenomena, secret human technology, or simple sensory misperceptions. Chasing these lights in the sky as evidence of visitors might be missing the point entirely. It is like a tiger in a terrestrial zoo becoming fixated on a tourist's camera flash, completely unaware of the hidden cameras embedded in the trees that have been watching it its entire life. The real surveillance would be invisible, yet there exists a more speculative fringe to this idea. Could some fraction of these anomalous sightings represent not a breach of protocol, but a part of it? One provocative theory suggests that a truly advanced civilization might employ a strategy of gradual acclimation. Instead of a single, shocking moment of first contact, they might permit occasional, ambiguous displays, phenomena just strange enough to stretch our scientific models without completely shattering them. These controlled leaks would serve a psychological purpose, slowly preparing humanity for the eventual, staggering revelation that we are not alone. They would be like gentle taps on the glass of our planetary enclosure, not to break it, but to remind us that there is something on the other side. This concept, while thrilling, underscores the paramount importance of scientific rigor. Our desire for an answer cannot outweigh the discipline required to find a real one. We must be relentless in distinguishing the noise of misidentified planes, weather balloons, and optical effects from any potential signal. This means applying the full weight of sensor data, peer review, and reproducible analysis, treating the sky not as a canvas for speculation, but as a laboratory for discovery. The zoo hypothesis does not give us permission to see aliens in every blurry video. It challenges us to look deeper, to search for evidence of a presence so sophisticated it has chosen to remain a perfect mystery. It asks us to consider that the greatest proof of a cosmic zoo may not be a flying saucer, but the enduring, enigmatic quiet that surrounds us. This search for invisible observers forces a complete reimagining of how we look for life. The traditional methods of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, are built on a hopeful and logical assumption that other civilizations want to talk. For decades, radio telescopes have patiently scanned the heavens, listening for the telltale pattern of an engineered signal, a deliberate hello woven into the cosmic static. Optical telescopes have searched for powerful laser pulses, another potential beacon from a species shouting into the dark. But the zoo hypothesis presents a quiet, devastating challenge to this entire approach. What if nobody is shouting? If advanced societies are deliberately maintaining a cosmic preserve, then broadcasting their location would be the ultimate violation of their own prime directive. Actively sending signals that could be detected by a species like ours would be like a park ranger using a megaphone to announce their presence to the animals they are sworn to protect. From the perspective of a zookeeper civilization, such behavior would be unthinkably irresponsible, or perhaps even illegal under a galactic code. This means our most enduring search strategy might be perfectly tuned to find a type of civilization that no longer exists, or perhaps never did, the gregarious, chatty newcomers who have not yet learned the wisdom of silence. We have been listening for a conversation, but the universe may be operating under a vow of quiet observation. This realization does not invalidate SETI, but it dramatically expands its required scope. The search must evolve from listening for messages to hunting for mistakes, or for the unavoidable side effects of inconceivably advanced engineering. We must look for the footprints, not the voice. One promising direction is the search for megastructures. A civilization utilizing the total energy output of its star would need to build something on a staggering scale, like a Dyson sphere or a vast swarm of energy-collecting satellites. While such a construct might be designed for efficiency, it could still leak traces of its existence. Our telescopes might detect a star whose light strangely dims in unconventional patterns, or one that glows with excess infrared radiation, the waste heat from an unimaginably vast machine. Finding such a signature would not be a message, it would be archaeology, the discovery of a cosmic artifact. Even more speculative is the search for evidence of the hiding itself. If a civilization is actively cloaking its presence, that cloaking technology, no matter how perfect, must operate within the laws of physics. Perhaps there are subtle gravitational lensing effects where there should be none, or odd distortions in the background starlight around a seemingly empty patch of space. We might one day detect the signature of a technology designed specifically to create silence, a shadow in the data where a star or a planet ought to be. This shifts the entire endeavor from a passive listen to an active, forensic investigation of the cosmos. It is no longer about waiting for a letter. It is about learning to see the invisible ink in which the library of the galaxy might be written. The challenge is immense, but it reframes our loneliness not as a failure of our instruments, but as the first clue in a much deeper mystery. The motivations behind a cosmic sanctuary could range from the deeply ethical to the chillingly pragmatic. At the highest end of possibility lies pure benevolence, a form of enlightened stewardship born from experience. A civilization that has weathered its own existential crises might view fledgling worlds with a sense of solemn responsibility. They could see the chaotic, beautiful process of biological and cultural evolution as the universe's greatest artwork, something to be preserved in its natural state at all costs. Their motivation would be akin to our own drive to protect the last untouched rainforests or the fragile ecosystems of the deep ocean, not for any resource they provide, but for their intrinsic value and irreplaceable wonder. In this view, Earth is a living museum of becoming, and their silence is the ultimate act of reverence, ensuring the exhibit remains authentic. A more practical, though still neutral, motivation might frame planets like ours as vital repositories. A galactic civilization spanning eons might value biological and cognitive diversity above all else, collecting not specimens, but entire worlds as libraries of genetic code and unique modes of consciousness. Each developing planet represents a novel chapter in the story of intelligence, a distinct solution to the universal challenges of survival, cooperation, and understanding. Preserving these worlds in isolation ensures the experiments are not contaminated, keeping the data pure for future study, or perhaps for a time when their own civilization needs to rediscover a lost perspective. Earth, then, would be less a park and more a carefully catalogued archive, its silence maintained to protect the integrity of the file. we must also consider motivations that are less about protection and more about control. A civilization might treat developing planets as long-term sociological experiments, observing patterns of conflict, innovation, and collapse from a detached clinical distance. The silence here is not respectful, it is methodological, ensuring the subjects do not become aware of the laboratory conditions. An even darker, though speculative, possibility casts planets not as preserves but as resources. A young, vibrant biosphere could be seen as a future harvest, or a planet with a developing technological species might be viewed as a curiosity to be collected, like an exotic animal for a private menagerie. In these scenarios, the silence is not a protocol of ethics, but one of husbandry or asset management, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Understanding this spectrum is crucial, because the intent behind the silence changes everything about our future. Is the unseen fence around our world designed to keep dangers out or to keep us in? The difference between a sanctuary and a cage, between a library and a laboratory, is profound. It refines the central question from simply "are we alone?" to what is the nature of the company we keep. The silence remains the same, but its meaning could be one of hope or of hidden peril. And for now, the universe offers no clue as to which it might be. But the silence of the zoo is not the only possible answer. A radically different and far more chilling interpretation of the great silence has taken root in both science and fiction. It is called the dark forest theory, and it paints the cosmos not as a curated sanctuary, but as a nightmarish wilderness where every civilization is a hidden hunter, terrified of becoming prey. This idea was masterfully explored in Liu Cixin's science fiction trilogy, beginning with the three-body problem. The metaphor is stark and unforgettable. Imagine a dark forest at night where every hunter is also a potential target. The only rule for survival is absolute silence. To make a sound, to light a fire, is to reveal your location to every other hidden hunter in the woods, any one of whom might decide you are a threat that must be eliminated before you can eliminate them. In this cosmic model, the universe is not filled with benevolent caretakers, but with paranoid, advanced civilizations who have learned a brutal first truth: trust is suicide. Any detectable signal, any sign of technological advancement, is not an invitation for conversation. It is a target painted on your star system. This explains the silence perfectly, not as a protocol of respect, but as a strategy of terrified concealment. Every civilization is listening intently, but broadcasting nothing, hiding in the radio quiet of their own solar systems, ready to launch a preemptive strike at the first hint of another's presence. The contrast with the zoo hypothesis could not be more extreme. One envisions a universe governed by mature ethics and structured observation, a place of patience and preservation. The other reveals a universe of perpetual, hidden conflict, a deadly game where the ultimate goal is not contact but cosmic anonymity. The zoo hypothesis suggests we are being given space to grow. The dark forest warns we are being given a chance to stay hidden before it is too late. This juxtaposition frames the great silence as a profound riddle with two possible keys, one born of hope, the other of fear. It forces a difficult question about our own behavior. For decades, we have been broadcasting our presence into the void with television and radio signals, and even intentionally sending messages like the Arecibo transmission. From a dark forest perspective, this is not a hopeful hello. It is the equivalent of shouting our coordinates into that dark, dangerous woods. Our efforts at communication could be seen not as a milestone, but as a potentially catastrophic mistake. Which model we believe in fundamentally changes how we should act. Do we continue to listen and call out, embracing the possibility of a galactic community? Or do we learn to be quiet, to cloak our emissions, and become hunters in the dark ourselves? The choice between these two visions is perhaps the most important strategic decision a young technological species can make, a bet on the ultimate nature of the cosmos itself. The stark choice between a cosmic sanctuary and a dark forest is not the final layer of this mystery. There exists a third, even more radical interpretation that reframes not just our place in the cosmos, but the very nature of our reality. This is where the zoo hypothesis intersects with the simulation argument, a mind-bending idea proposed by philosophers like Nick Bostrom. It suggests that our universe, with all its stars and planets, might not be the base level of reality. Instead, it could be an extraordinarily sophisticated simulation, running on the unfathomable computing power of a post-human civilization. In this context, Earth is not merely a physical preserve in a galactic zoo. It could be a simulated preserve within a vast computational experiment. The fine-tuning of the universe, the precise calibration of physical constants that allow for atoms, stars, and life to exist, takes on a new meaning. From a zoo perspective, this fine-tuning could be evidence of a natural sanctuary set within a rare, life-friendly cosmos. From a simulation perspective, it could simply be the initial parameters chosen by the programmers, the settings adjusted to see what kind of intelligent life emerges under these specific conditions. Both ideas offer a powerful explanation for the Fermi paradox. The great silence in a simulated universe is easy to explain. The other civilizations in the simulation might simply not be activated yet, or they might be in entirely separate, non-interacting instances of the code. There is no need for physical starships to cross the void because the void itself is part of the program. The simulated civilizations that do exist might be kept in isolated sectors, like folders on a hard drive, to prevent cross-contamination of the data. While the zoo hypothesis and the simulation argument are distinct, one dealing with physical stewardship and the other with digital creation, they share a profound and unsettling theme. Both propose that our perceived reality is not the ultimate reality. In one, we are a watched species on a protected planet. In the other, we are watched data in a protected process. Both suggest our existence is curated or constructed for a purpose by an intelligence so far beyond our own that its motives are inscrutable. This philosophical layer adds a dizzying depth to the zoo concept. It asks us to consider that the fence around our world might not be made of space and silence, but of logic and code. The watchers are not in the next star system. They are in the next layer of existence altogether. This does not make our struggles, our love, our art, or our curiosity any less real to us, but it does reframe the entire project of searching the stars. We might be peering at a rendered skybox, wondering why we cannot find the other players, unaware that the game was designed for a single participant. To sit with this possibility is to confront the ultimate question of purpose. Are we a natural wonder being preserved, or are we a digital thought being studied? The silence of the cosmos offers no answer, but it suddenly hums with a new kind of potential. One where every mystery, from the quantum to the cosmic, might be a feature of the simulation, a clue left by the architects of our reality. This line of thinking inevitably leads us to examine our own past. If we are in a cosmic preserve designed for natural development, then our historical record should be free of definitive, inexplicable intervention. Yet our ancient myths and monuments are filled with stories of gods descending from the sky, imparting knowledge and performing miracles. For proponents of ancient astronaut theories, these are not mere legends. They are historical reports, evidence that the zookeepers have already visited, that the fence was breached long ago. They point to the mathematical precision of the Great Pyramid, the massive stone blocks at Puma Punku, or the vivid descriptions of flying vehicles in ancient Indian texts as proof of extraterrestrial tutoring. This interpretation directly co-opts the logic of the zoo hypothesis, but twists its core principle. It suggests the silence is not total, that advanced beings did interfere in our distant past, starting our civilization before retreating back into observation. On the surface, this seems to solve multiple puzzles at once, explaining both technological leaps in antiquity and our current solitude. It is a compelling narrative, blending mystery with a tantalizing answer. Yet, when held against the rigorous framework of the zoo hypothesis, this idea begins to unravel. The central tenet of a true cosmic sanctuary is non-interference. A civilization advanced enough to establish such a protocol would understand that even a single, ancient intervention would irrevocably alter the course of a species' development. It would be the ultimate contamination of the experiment. Giving a primitive culture the principles of engineering or astronomy would set their entire intellectual trajectory on a borrowed path, making their subsequent achievements inauthentic. From a zookeeper's perspective, it would be like a biologist not just observing an ant colony, but giving the ants a blueprint for a skyscraper. The data from that point forward would be worthless. Archaeological consensus offers more grounded, though no less impressive, explanations for these historical wonders. The construction of the pyramids is a documented triumph of human ingenuity, organization, and gradual engineering refinement over generations. The stories of flying gods often align with known celestial phenomena, like the dramatic movements of planets or the terrifying spectacle of comets, interpreted through the cultural lens of pre-scientific societies. This is not to diminish the awe we feel for our ancestors, but to credit their own profound capabilities. The real mystery is not how they built these things with alien help, but how they achieved such grandeur with the tools and knowledge they painstakingly developed themselves. That is the authentic story the zookeepers would be here to witness, a story of self-driven triumph. Therefore, most ancient astronaut claims are fundamentally inconsistent with a true zoo hypothesis. They replace one mystery, how did ancient humans accomplish this, with a larger one, why would flawless observers break their own prime directive? If the goal is to preserve a natural cultural evolution, then past contact is the one thing that could never be allowed. The artifacts and myths remain, but their most likely interpretation is a testament to human imagination and resilience, not a logbook of extraterrestrial visitation. This distinction is crucial. It separates speculative, story-driven fascination from a testable theoretical framework. It asks us to find wonder not in imagined visitors, but in the undeniable, unassisted brilliance of our own species, slowly awakening on a protected planet. The most compelling reason for cosmic silence is not mystery, but medicine. A true interstellar civilization would understand that first contact is not a meeting of cultures. It is a biological and ideological event of potentially catastrophic proportions. Their policy of non-interference is less a philosophical choice and more a strict quarantine protocol, designed to protect a fragile, developing world from contamination on a planetary scale. The risks are not speculative. We have written the playbook for this disaster right here on Earth. Consider the simple microbe. An alien visitor, even in a perfectly sealed suit, might carry microorganisms in its craft or on its equipment. Organisms that have evolved over billions of years in a completely different biochemical environment. To our biosphere, such a microbe would be the ultimate invasive species, a biological wildcard with no natural predators and no evolved defenses in any earthly life form. It could act as a super pathogen, devastating global agriculture or collapsing entire food chains, or it could be a hyper-efficient decomposer, breaking down materials we consider stable. The historical parallel is devastatingly clear. When European explorers reached the Americas, they inadvertently brought smallpox, measles, and influenza, viruses to which indigenous populations had no immunity. The consequence was not merely illness, it was a demographic catastrophe that reshaped continents. An alien microbe could make that tragedy look like a local outbreak, threatening not a population, but the foundational balance of our planet's entire web of life. The zoo's fence, in this light, is a sterile barrier, a galactic cleanroom ensuring our biosphere's experiment continues without a fatal, introduced variable. Yet the danger is not only biological, it is cultural. Advanced knowledge delivered too soon would be a toxin to the human mind and society. Imagine if a benevolent visitor handed us the complete schematic for a fusion reactor, a cure for all disease, or the theory of everything. Initially, it seems like a gift beyond measure, but the immediate effect would be the collapse of entire global industries, from energy to pharmaceuticals to fundamental research, triggering economic chaos and unprecedented unemployment. More deeply, it would devastate the human spirit of inquiry. Why struggle, why experiment, why dream when the answers are already provided? This is the brain in a vat problem on a civilizational scale. If all challenges are solved for you, what is left to drive progress, creativity, or the profound satisfaction of discovery? Our entire history of innovation, from the wheel to the smartphone, is a story of facing a need and finding a solution through grit and ingenuity. That struggle defines us. To remove it is to risk creating a passive, stagnant species that has lost its will to reach, precisely the opposite of a species ready for the stars. The zoo, therefore, is not a prison designed to keep us confined. It is a protective isolation ward, allowing our immune system, both biological and cultural, to strengthen on its own. It grants us the essential gift of solving our own problems, making our own mistakes, and earning our own wisdom. This perspective casts our own environmental responsibilities in a startling new light. Our efforts to protect ecosystems from invasive species, to preserve indigenous cultures from homogenization, are not just local good deeds, they are a rehearsal for the ultimate cosmic ethic. We are learning on a small scale the profound responsibility that comes with being a steward, and in doing so, we may be glimpsing the very reason the universe has chosen to leave us, mercifully, to our own devices. The moment of confirmation would be the single greatest shock in human history. Learning we are not alone is one thing, but discovering we have never been alone, that every moment of our existence has unfolded under a form of cosmic observation, would force a psychological reckoning unlike any other. This is the profound challenge of the cosmic shock model, the idea that first contact under the zoo hypothesis would not be a simple meeting, but a fundamental rewriting of our entire identity. For centuries, across countless cultures, humanity has viewed itself as the pinnacle of creation, the sole bearers of consciousness in a vast, silent universe. Our religions, our philosophies, our art, all rest upon this foundational assumption of our unique significance. To have that assumption definitively shattered, to learn we are not the apex but an exhibit, would trigger a collective existential crisis of unimaginable scale. The initial reaction could mirror the profound disorientation felt during the Copernican revolution. When science proved Earth was not the center of the universe, it did more than correct an astronomical error. It displaced humanity from the literal and symbolic center of everything. It was a slow, deep tremor that shook the foundations of theology and human self-worth for generations. Confirmation of the zoo hypothesis would be that tremor amplified into a planet-wide quake, happening not over centuries but in the span of a single news cycle. The societal impacts would cascade. Many religious frameworks built on doctrines of humanity's special relationship with a creator would face an unprecedented theological challenge. How do scriptures account for silent, hyper-advanced caretakers? Would faiths adapt, interpreting the watchers as angels or instruments of a grander divine plan? Or would some structures fracture under the weight of this new cosmic reality? Beyond theology, our entire sense of agency would be called into question. every major decision, every war and peace, every cultural triumph and tragedy would be re-evaluated through a new, haunting lens. Did we ever truly have free will, or were we always performing, however unconsciously, for an audience of unknown peers? This could lead to a global crisis of motivation, a societal depression where nothing feels authentically ours. Yet, history also shows our incredible capacity for adaptation and finding new purpose. The same Copernican shock that displaced us also ignited the scientific revolution, pushing us to understand our true place in a grander system. The potential confirmation of our zoo status could, after the initial trauma, catalyze an equally powerful positive transformation. The unifying shock of a shared cosmic reality could dissolve ancient terrestrial divisions, making national borders and ethnic conflicts seem like petty squabbles in a sandbox. A common, overwhelming question would unite all of humanity. What do we do now? This could forge a new, planet-wide sense of purpose, not as a chosen species but as an aspiring one. The goal would shift from dominating our world to maturing beyond it, to proving we are worthy of stepping out from behind the observational glass. Preparing for this potential future is not science fiction. It is a crucial exercise in psychological and social maturity. We must begin the difficult conversations now among philosophers, theologians, scientists, and leaders about how to manage such a revelation. How do we maintain societal cohesion in the face of cosmic insignificance? How do we preserve the meaning in our human journey when we learn it has been observed all along? Grappling with these questions in advance is perhaps the first real step in proving we are ready to graduate, demonstrating that we possess not just technological cleverness, but the profound wisdom to handle the ultimate truth, whatever it may be. Our greatest earthly struggles may be the very test we are meant to pass. The first and most profound trigger for contact under a zoo-like protocol would not be a new rocket or a powerful telescope, but a shift in our collective consciousness. Imagine humanity achieving something we have never managed in all our recorded history: sustainable global unity and lasting peace. This is not the mere absence of open warfare, but the active presence of a cooperative planetary civilization. It would mean we have finally learned to see our primary identity not as members of competing nations or ideologies, but as a single, intelligent species sharing one fragile world. For any advanced observer, a civilization that cannot govern itself without periodic, catastrophic internal conflict would be seen as dangerously immature. Inviting such a volatile species into a wider interstellar community would be an unthinkable risk. Why introduce a spark to a room full of fuel? Achieving global stability demonstrates a level of social and ethical maturity that transcends technological cleverness. It proves we can manage the immense power our science gives us without turning it into a weapon against ourselves. The sheer scale of this challenge is staggering. It requires overcoming forces that have defined human history for millennia: deep-seated nationalism, fierce competition for resources, and seemingly irreconcilable ideological conflicts. These are not simple disagreements, they are the foundational engines of our past, driving both our greatest innovations and our most terrible wars. To move beyond them would represent an evolutionary leap in human psychology and social organization. It would mean creating systems so resilient, so fair, and so universally trusted that they can resolve disputes without widespread violence or oppression. This is why solving our shared planetary crises could be interpreted as the clearest evidence of our growing collective maturity. A unified global response to climate change, for instance, is not just an environmental necessity. It is a demonstration of long-term thinking and species-wide responsibility. It shows we can recognize a slow-moving, complex threat and organize across borders to address it, prioritizing the future of the whole over the short-term gain of a few. Similarly, a concerted effort to eradicate extreme poverty and ensure global health security proves we value every member of our human family, that we understand our own stability is tied to the well-being of all. Successfully navigating a global pandemic with transparency and shared resources would be a powerful testament to our cooperative instincts overcoming our fears. From a cosmic perspective, these are not separate political issues. They are parts of a single, comprehensive exam. Each global challenge we face is a question on the test, and our ability to answer it together is how we score. This framework transforms our most daunting problems into something more than burdens. They become the curriculum for our graduation. Every treaty signed, every cross-border scientific collaboration, every international aid mission becomes more than just good policy. It is practice for cosmic citizenship. It is us learning the rules of a much larger community by first applying them here at home. The silence from the stars, then, is not indifference. It is the patient waiting of a teacher who will not intervene until the student has solved the core problem on their own. Our journey toward peace and unity is not just a hope for a better world. It may be the precise key needed to unlock the door to everything beyond it. A thriving, self-sustaining city on Mars is more than a triumph of engineering. It is a declaration of permanence. For a civilization confined to a single planet, no matter how advanced, the universe holds an existential veto. A single asteroid impact, a nearby supernova, or even our own unchecked global conflict could erase every trace of our existence in a cosmic instant. This vulnerability is the ultimate fragility of a one-world species. By establishing a permanent, independent foothold on another world, we fundamentally alter our cosmic equation. We prove we are no longer a flash in the pan, a brief flicker of consciousness that can be extinguished by a single catastrophe. We demonstrate a trait any elder civilization would recognize immediately: the will to endure. This is not about a few flags and footprints, or even a research base that requires constant resupply from Earth. The trigger is true self-sufficiency, a settlement capable of maintaining and growing its population, producing its own food, air, and water, and manufacturing its own technology using the resources of its new world. It is a closed loop of life, severed from the umbilical cord of the home planet. Achieving this requires solving a staggering array of problems, from radiation shielding and low-gravity agriculture to closed ecological systems and complex social dynamics in an utterly alien environment. The very act of solving these problems forces a new kind of long-term thinking, planning not in election cycles or fiscal years, but in generations and centuries. It cultivates a patience and foresight that marks a mature civilization. From the perspective of a cosmic observer, this milestone is a powerful signal. A species that has spread its eggs to another basket is no longer an experiment at risk of sudden termination. It has graduated from being a local phenomenon to becoming a persistent feature of the galaxy. It shows we have looked into the void, understood its dangers, and taken concrete, monumental steps to ensure our story continues. This transforms the ambition of space exploration from a scientific curiosity or a geopolitical contest into an essential evolutionary step, a rite of passage for any intelligence that hopes to play a lasting role in the cosmos. It suggests the watchers in the zoo might only step forward when they are certain they are not introducing themselves to a civilization on the brink of oblivion, but to one that has secured its ticket to the future. Our journey to become multiplanetary, then, is not just about reaching Mars, it is about reaching a state of readiness, proving to the silent universe that humanity is finally, irrevocably, here to stay. The mastery of reality itself would be the ultimate graduation exam. Beyond social unity and interplanetary expansion lies a third, perhaps final, trigger for contact, a fundamental rewrite of our understanding of the cosmos. This is not about building a better engine or a faster computer. It is about comprehending and harnessing the very rules that allow engines and computers to exist at all. Imagine humanity achieving a complete unified theory of physics, a single elegant framework that seamlessly explains gravity, quantum mechanics, and the forces that bind the universe. Or picture us mastering a source of energy that seems like magic to us now, like zero-point energy, tapping into the boundless quantum fluctuations of empty space. These are not incremental advancements. They represent an intellectual and technological coming of age, a shift from being creatures who manipulate our environment to becoming beings who can, in a sense, manipulate the underlying fabric of reality. For a galactic community, such a breakthrough would be a bright beacon, a clear signal that a species has moved from childhood curiosity into mature cosmic literacy. It shows we are no longer just playing with the toys nature left lying around. We have deduced the principles of the toy factory and are ready to build our own. This transforms the pure, abstract pursuit of knowledge into something with staggering practical and existential consequences. A civilization that understands reality at its most fundamental level has unlocked the master key to physics. They can potentially engineer space-time, manipulate gravity, or travel in ways that render our current rocketry as primitive as a canoe. More importantly, they have proven they possess the intellectual rigor and patience to uncover the universe's deepest secrets on their own. This is the kind of achievement that would make a watching civilization take notice, not with concern, but with recognition. It suggests we are ready to engage in conversations and collaborations involving technologies and concepts that were previously beyond our grasp, simply because we lacked the foundational language to understand them. The pursuit of a grand unified theory today, often seen as the pinnacle of abstract science, could therefore be the most practical endeavor of all. Every experiment at a particle collider, every observation of a distant galaxy's distortion, every complex equation scribbled on a whiteboard is not just an attempt to satisfy human curiosity. In the context of the cosmic zoo, it is practice for a final oral defense. We are slowly, painstakingly assembling the answers to the universe's toughest questions, proving we have the cognitive stamina to earn our place at the table. The thrilling prospect for every researcher is that their life's work, their search for a beautiful equation or a strange new particle, might not just win a Nobel Prize. It might be the precise line of code that finally convinces the universe we are ready to leave the simulation, or the elegant proof that persuades the zookeepers to finally, quietly, open the gate. From their vantage point, our entire planet is a living laboratory. If a civilization is observing us under a strict ethical protocol, their methods would prioritize complete non-interference, gathering data with the subtlety of a ghost. They would not need to land or communicate. They would simply watch, using technologies that make our own satellites seem like crude toys. Imagine a form of spectroscopy so advanced it could analyze the chemical signature of our atmosphere from light years away, tracking not just the rise of industrial pollutants, but the subtle seasonal changes in plant life across continents. They could monitor the pulsing glow of our cities at night, a direct measure of our energy use and population spread. Our global communications networks, the vast digital chatter of our species, would present a fascinating, encrypted tapestry. An ethical observer would likely analyze the structure and volume of this data flow, the patterns of connection and peak usage times, without ever breaking the encryption to listen in. It would be like watching the nervous system of a planet fire and pulse, understanding its health and activity levels without reading its private thoughts. This passive data collection forms the backbone of a truly ethical cosmic anthropology. The observers would be chroniclers, not characters, in our story. This leads to the most difficult ethical line they would have to hold. From orbit, they would witness our triumphs and our tragedies with the same detached clarity. They would see the flash of explosions from regional conflicts, the swirling patterns of massive storms, the silent creep of deforestation. Their prime directive would compel them to observe these events without intervention, no matter how distressing. In this, their role mirrors that of a terrestrial nature documentarian filming on the African savanna. The filmmaker watches as a predator brings down a gazelle. Their heart might ache, but they do not step in to stop the hunt. They understand that this event, however harsh, is part of the natural balance of that ecosystem, a crucial thread in the larger tapestry of life. To intervene would be to corrupt the very reality they are there to document. For our cosmic observers, human conflict and natural disaster are part of our ecological and social development. Stepping in to prevent a war or divert a hurricane, however benevolent it might seem in the moment, would irrevocably alter our path. It would make them active participants in our history, turning their observational preserve into a managed garden. This perspective fundamentally reframes the watchers. They are not indifferent gods ignoring our suffering, nor are they benevolent guardians waiting to save us. They are scientists of a staggering scale, committed to a rigid methodology that values the integrity of the experiment above all else. Their silence is not cold, it is clinically professional. This shift makes the zoo hypothesis feel less like a fanciful myth and more like a rigorous intellectual framework. It moves the discussion from wondering if they are out there to pondering how they might operate, what data they would value, and what heartbreaking lines their ethics would force them to draw. It asks us to consider our own planet from a stranger's eyes, not as a stage for drama, but as a complex, self-contained system of astonishing beauty and raw, unfiltered truth. But for all its elegance, the zoo hypothesis faces sharp criticism from the scientific community. The most pointed objection is that it is fundamentally untestable. A good scientific theory must make predictions that can be proven false through observation or experiment. How do you prove the absence of something that is, by definition, designed to be invisible? If we detect a signal tomorrow, the hypothesis is disproven. But if we detect nothing for another 1,000 years, it remains just as valid because the watchers could simply be maintaining their perfect silence. This lack of falsifiability pushes the idea from the realm of hard science into the domain of philosophy or speculative thought. A fascinating story, but not one we can verify with data. Critics argue it functions more as a metaphor than a mechanism, a comforting narrative we impose on the unsettling quiet. A second major criticism targets the core analogy itself. The entire concept is deeply anthropomorphic. We are projecting our own very human institutions, like wildlife preserves and ethical research protocols, onto intelligences that may be utterly alien in their psychology and motivations. Why would a civilization 1,000,000 years more advanced share our terrestrial concepts of conservation, non-interference, or even curiosity? Their reasons for silence, if they exist at all, could be motives we cannot begin to imagine, tied to physics or cosmic structures we do not yet understand. To assume they operate like galactic park rangers is to make a massive, and perhaps naive, assumption about the nature of intelligence itself. This leads many scientists to invoke Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best. When confronted with the great silence, the most straightforward answer is not an elaborate galactic conspiracy of hidden observers. It is simply that we are, in fact, alone, or that intelligent life is so vanishingly rare that no one is within range to communicate. Adding layers of unseen watchers and complex ethical protocols solves the paradox, but it does so by introducing a host of new, unproven assumptions. From this skeptical viewpoint, the zoo hypothesis is an intellectually interesting but ultimately unnecessary complication. Engaging with these criticisms is not a weakness, it is essential for a balanced perspective. They remind us to temper wonder with rigor, to distinguish between a compelling story and a testable truth. The hypothesis's greatest value may not be as a definitive answer, but as a powerful tool. It expands the solution space for Fermi's paradox beyond the grim narratives of inevitable self-destruction. It forces us to consider that advanced civilizations might operate under frameworks of responsibility we are only beginning to articulate ourselves. Even if it remains in the category of a profound thought experiment, it challenges our assumptions, refines our questions, and ensures that as we search the silence, we are listening not just for a hello, but for the profound reasons behind a universe that has chosen, so far, to say nothing at all. A universe brimming with asteroids of pure metal and gas giants of endless fuel seems to render our little world irrelevant. This is the resource paradox, a logical challenge to the zoo idea. If advanced civilizations have the entire galaxy to mine, why bother designating a backwater planet like Earth as a protected preserve? The raw materials here are a rounding error in a cosmic ledger. The answer, however, may lie in a different kind of economics, one where the ultimate currency is not matter but uniqueness. Think of our own world's conservation efforts. We do not protect the Amazon rainforest because its trees are a scarce source of lumber. We can grow timber on plantations far more efficiently. We protect it because it is an irreplaceable library of life, a masterpiece of evolution that took tens of millions of years to compose. Its true value is in its information, the intricate web of relationships and the genetic code within every unique species. From a cosmic perspective, Earth could be seen in exactly the same light. A planet where life arose naturally and evolved intelligent, technological beings might be one of the rarest phenomena in the entire universe. The specific path our biosphere took, from the first single-celled organisms to the complexity of human culture, represents a dataset that cannot be replicated or synthesized. It is a one-of-a-kind narrative in the story of the cosmos. For a civilization that has mastered material abundance, the only remaining scarce resources would be novelty, creativity, and authentic experience. A naturally evolving world with all its unpredictable beauty and hardship would be the ultimate work of art, more valuable than any stockpile of minerals. This reframes our planet's worth completely. We are not a resource depot, we are a living museum, a sanctuary of a particular kind of cosmic magic that might be vanishingly rare. The silence around us, then, is not about hoarding materials, but about preserving a masterpiece from contamination, ensuring the painting is not touched by an outside hand. It suggests that the most advanced civilizations may have graduated from an economics of stuff to an economics of meaning, where the preservation of rare and beautiful processes is the highest purpose of all. The patience required for such a cosmic protocol becomes fathomable only when we stretch our sense of time to its breaking point. Our entire written history, from the first Sumerian tablets to the glow of our digital age, spans a mere 5,000 years. To a civilization that has persisted for 1,000,000 years, that entire span is less than a single season. To one that has endured for 1,000,000,000 years, our rise from hunter-gatherers to a spacefaring species is a fleeting blink, a momentary fluctuation in a vast and steady dataset. From this vantage point, their non-interference is not an act of discipline, but a simple necessity of scale. Why would a being that thinks in epochs rush to interrupt an experiment that has only just begun? Our wars, our empires, our renaissances and dark ages are not grand dramas to them, but rapid, fascinating pulses on a long-term graph. Individual data points in a study of cultural evolution that may take 100,000 years to yield meaningful trends. This recalibration of time transforms the nature of observation itself. A 1,000,000-year-old civilization would have witnessed the slow dance of continents, the birth and death of stars in our local galactic neighborhood. They would possess a kind of cosmic patience we can scarcely conceive, viewing our planet's development with the same detached, enduring interest we might give to a centuries-old tree slowly growing in a forest preserve. Their very mode of communication, should they choose to initiate it, would likely reflect this immense timescale. Forget radio signals expecting a reply within a human lifetime. Their idea of a message might be the gradual, engineered dimming of a star in a precise, mathematical pattern over the course of 10,000 years. A beacon meant not for us, but for whatever we become in 10 millennia. Their probes might not be sleek ships zipping between stars, but rugged, slow-moving arcs, traveling for 500,000 years to reach us, carrying not ambassadors, but autonomous observers programmed to wait and watch for eons. This perspective makes the Great Silence feel different. It is not a wall, but a vast, quiet field where everything, including the growth of intelligence, moves at the speed of geology. Our frantic searching over decades, our impatience for an answer, might be like a mayfly trying to perceive the growth of the redwood tree it was born beneath. The Watchers are not ignoring us, they are operating on a clock so grand that our entire civilization has only just appeared on its face. This forces a humbling and thrilling shift in our own ambitions. To even hope to be noticed, we must learn to think not in generations but in species time. Our projects, our monuments, our very records must be designed for longevity, carved not just in stone but in orbits and genetics to show we are thinking beyond the next century toward the next million years. It asks whether humanity can cultivate a patience to match the silence, to plant trees under whose shade we know we will never sit, and in doing so, send our own slow signal into the deep time of the cosmos. The possibility of being observed compels us to act not with fear but with unprecedented unity. Whether the zoo hypothesis is correct or not, the mere chance of contact presents humanity with its greatest organizational challenge. We cannot afford to be caught unprepared, reacting to a cosmic event with the same fragmented, nationalistic instincts that have defined our past conflicts. The responsible path forward is to develop a global protocol for first contact, a shared plan of action drafted not in the panic of a revelation, but in the calm light of reason. This is not science fiction, it is a practical necessity for our species' next chapter. The logical foundation for this effort already exists within the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. This body, which already manages treaties on the peaceful use of space, provides a neutral, international framework. Empowering it to coordinate a contact protocol would ensure no single nation or corporation could claim sole authority over humanity's response, a vital step to prevent terrestrial conflict sparked by a celestial event. The protocol must be built on science, not speculation, involving astronomers, linguists, biologists, sociologists, and diplomats. Its first task would be to establish a clear, transparent decision-making structure. Who has the authority to verify a signal or an artifact as truly non-human? Who speaks for Earth, and what message do we send in reply? These questions demand answers long before any signal arrives. Cultural and linguistic preparation is equally critical. How do we communicate concepts that may have no parallel in an alien consciousness? Teams would need to develop symbolic languages based on universal mathematics and physics, creating a Rosetta Stone for the cosmos. Furthermore, we must prepare our own global society for the psychological impact. This means fostering public dialogue about the potential for contact, not as a tabloid spectacle, but as a serious scientific and philosophical possibility, helping to inoculate our cultures against the shock. International law must also evolve. We need treaties that explicitly prevent any nation from weaponizing contact or claiming exclusive rights to alien technology, ensuring any knowledge gained benefits all of humanity. This proactive work transforms a speculative theory into a powerful catalyst for global coordination. By preparing together for an unknown future, we practice the very unity that a mature civilization would need to demonstrate. In striving to become a planet that is ready to meet another, we might just become the wiser, more cooperative world we have always needed to be. the greatest outcome of the zoo hypothesis may have nothing to do with watchers in the stars and everything to do with the reflection we see in the mirror it holds up to us. The most unsettling question is not whether we are being watched, but why. If an intelligence is observing our development, does that imply our journey has a destination they are waiting for us to reach? This notion of a cosmic purpose, a finish line hidden somewhere in our future, collides violently with one of humanity's deepest beliefs, our sense of free will. We cherish the idea that our choices are our own, that our history is a tapestry woven from countless individual decisions, accidents, and acts of defiance. The zoo hypothesis, however, introduces a silent director to this play. If our planet is a preserve, then perhaps the boundaries of our enclosure, the very rules of physics and biology, were set to guide us toward a specific kind of outcome. Are we climbing a mountain of our own choosing, or are we navigating a carefully constructed maze with only one exit? This tension between curated development and genuine autonomy is the philosophical heart of the mystery. It forces us to confront ancient debates about determinism, the idea that every event, including human cognition and action, is the inevitable result of preceding causes. In a cosmic zoo, those preceding causes might include the subtle, invisible hand of an observer's design. They may have set the initial conditions of our solar system, or even our evolutionary path, not to control every detail, but to nudge the experiment toward the emergence of a technological, self-aware species. From this perspective, our free will exists, but it operates within a much larger, pre-built playground. We are free to choose which slide to go down or which swing to use, but the park itself was designed by someone else. This does not necessarily rob our choices of meaning. Our struggles for justice, our bursts of creativity, our personal loves and losses all remain intensely real to us. They are the substance of our lived experience. Yet, the possibility of an overarching framework asks us to consider whether our greatest achievements are triumphs of independent spirit, or simply the expected blossoming of a seed planted long ago. This is where existentialist philosophy offers a powerful counterpoint. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre argued that existence precedes essence, meaning we are not born with a predetermined purpose. We are thrown into the world and must create our own meaning through our actions and choices. The zoo hypothesis, in a strange way, could be the ultimate test of this idea. Even if we are in a preserve, even if our stage was built by unseen hands, the script is not written. The watchers, if they are ethical, are observing precisely to see what script we write for ourselves. Our free will, then, is not an illusion but the very variable of interest. They are not waiting for us to recite predetermined lines. They are waiting to see what original play we produce. This reframes the entire dynamic. Our purpose is not to fulfill a destiny someone else authored, but to author a destiny compelling enough to make the watchers finally applaud. The hypothesis becomes less about a cage and more about a canvas. The silence is the blank space, and our history, with all its chaos and brilliance, is the painting we are making upon it. Whether the canvas was given to us or not, the strokes are entirely our own. Grappling with these questions has immense value, even if we never learn the answers. It pushes us to examine the nature of our own consciousness and agency with fresh urgency. Are we truly the authors of our future, or are we characters in a story whose final chapter is already known from a seat in the cosmic balcony? The power of the zoo hypothesis lies not in providing a solution, but in sharpening our inquiry. It teaches us to ask better, deeper questions about what it means to be free, what it means to have purpose, and what it would take for our species to create a meaning so undeniable that it echoes beyond the walls of any preserve, real or imagined. This profound shift in perspective offers us a powerful choice. We can view the possibility of being a watched species as a source of existential dread, a confirmation of our cosmic insignificance. Or we can embrace it as the foundation for a new and unifying philosophy, a cosmic humanism. This world view begins with a necessary and healthy dose of humility. It accepts that we may not be the center of the universe, that our planet might be one exhibit among many in a grand galactic museum. This humility, however, is not an endpoint, it is the starting point for a deeper kind of pride. Because within this protected space, every single thing we have ever accomplished is ours. Every painting, every symphony, every mathematical proof, every act of compassion, every hard-won scientific breakthrough was achieved without a manual from the stars. Our art, our science, our messy, beautiful cultures, and our relentless resilience are not diminished by the idea of observers, they are magnified. They become the authentic, unscripted masterpiece we created in the quiet studio the universe provided. This realization can forge a new planetary identity, dissolving ancient divisions. If we are all equally part of the same cosmic exhibit, then national borders and ethnic conflicts start to look like trivial squabbles between cells in the same organism. The shared, overwhelming context of a watched cosmos could provide the ultimate common ground, uniting humanity with a single, galvanizing goal: to mature, to prove ourselves, to collectively grow up as a species. The zoo hypothesis, seen through this lens, transforms from a potential cage into a protective chrysalis. A chrysalis is not a prison. It is a necessary stage of metamorphosis, a sheltered space where radical transformation can occur safely, away from predators and the elements. Within it, the caterpillar dissolves into a kind of organic soup, only to reassemble itself into something entirely new, something capable of flight. Our planetary isolation, our great silence, could be that chrysalis stage. We are in the process of dissolving our old, fragmented ways of being, with the potential to emerge as a unified, spacefaring civilization. This is a fundamentally hopeful and empowering narrative. It gives our current global struggles a profound context. Every effort to establish peace, to share resources, to heal our environment is not just about solving an earthly problem. It is practice for cosmic citizenship. It is us strengthening our wings inside the chrysalis, preparing for the moment we are ready to break out and meet whatever or whoever awaits. Cosmic humanism does not ask us to wait for salvation from above. It charges us with our own salvation, our own maturation. It tells us that the most important audience for our actions is not some distant watcher, but our future selves and the legacy we will leave for the next 1,000 generations of humanity. The hypothesis becomes an invitation to live up to our highest potential, to create a civilization so thoughtful, so creative, and so enduring that if the watchers are real, they will one day look at each other and simply nod, knowing the time for quiet observation is finally over. The silence itself becomes a new kind of map, to move the zoo hypothesis from philosophical speculation into the realm of legitimate science. We must design research programs that search not for a message, but for the architecture of the silence. This requires a radical shift in our approach to astrobiology, turning our instruments toward the detection of absence, of shadows, and of perfect stealth. The first avenue is the hunt for cloaking technosignatures. Instead of scanning stars for obvious megastructures like Dyson spheres, we should look for the subtle signatures of technology designed to hide them. Imagine a star whose light dims in a pattern that defies natural explanation, not because something is being built, but because something is being perfectly concealed. Advanced civilizations might employ cloaking fields that bend light or manipulate spacetime to render their habitats invisible. Our telescopes could search for gravitational lensing effects with no visible cause, or for stars that appear strangely dim for their type, as if a fraction of their light is being diverted by an unseen screen. Finding such an anomaly would not reveal a civilization, but the fingerprint of a technology whose sole purpose is to remain unseen, a profound clue that the universe values privacy. A second, more local search would turn our scrutiny inward to our own solar backyard. If Earth is a long-term preserve, the most logical place for monitoring equipment is right here, hidden in plain sight. We should initiate systematic surveys of stable gravitational points, like Lagrange points, and the vast reaches of the asteroid belt and Oort cloud, using next-generation deep space radar and spectroscopy. The goal would be to find objects that do not belong, not flashing spacecraft, but ancient, dormant probes. These observers might be the size of a pebble, coated in materials that mimic carbonaceous asteroids, programmed to awaken only for periodic data collection before returning to a state indistinguishable from space rock. Discovering even one such object with isotopic ratios or material science that defies natural formation would be the ultimate evidence of a curated reality. It would mean the zoo fence is not light years away. It has been woven into the very fabric of our neighborhood for eons. Finally, this hypothesis demands a new kind of interdisciplinary science, one that merges astronomy with ecology, game theory, and complex systems modeling. We can create sophisticated computer simulations to explore the possible behaviors and motivations of a zookeeper civilization. How would such an entity manage its preserves across galactic timescales? What are the ethical and practical triggers for intervention? By modeling different scenarios from pure observation to gradual acclimation, we can generate predictions about what kinds of universal signatures such a civilization might leave, even inadvertently. This transforms the zoo hypothesis from a static idea into a dynamic engine for inquiry, generating a suite of novel, testable questions. It ensures our search for intelligence remains vibrant, innovative, and humble, always aware that the greatest discovery might not be a signal in the noise, but finally understanding the elegant, silent reason for the noise itself. But all these possibilities rest on a single, staggering assumption that others are out there waiting. There exists a far simpler and perhaps more terrifying answer to the great silence. What if the zoo is empty because it has not been built yet? What if we are not the exhibit but the architects? This is the ultimate inversion of our cosmic story. The silence is not a protocol observed by others. It is the natural quiet of a universe where technological intelligence is so rare, so precious, that we are the first to awaken in our corner of the galaxy. We are not late to the party. We are the ones who must set the table, write the invitations, and decide what kind of gathering this will be. This possibility carries a weight unlike any other. It means every ethical dilemma we have pondered, every question of non-interference and preservation, is not a test we are taking, but a test we are writing for the future. We are not students hoping to pass. We are the first teachers, determining the curriculum for all who might come after. Our actions now, in this fragile, early stage of our technological adolescence, could set the ethical template for the next billion years of galactic history. Think of it as a cosmic chain of custody. If we are the first, then the responsibility for how emerging life is treated falls squarely and solely upon us. When our probes eventually drift into other star systems and find worlds simmering with probiotic chemistry, or planets where simple life has just begun its climb, what will we do? Will we observe from a distance, honoring the principle of natural development we once hoped others held for us? Or will our curiosity, our hunger for resources, or our fear lead us to interfere, to cede, to guide, or even to claim? The precedent we set will echo. If we become the civilization that other nascent intelligences one day whisper about in their own myths and theories, what will those stories say? Will they speak of a silent, patient presence in the dark, a respectful watcher who allowed them to find their own way? Or will they tell cautionary tales of ancient visitors who left ruins and mysteries, who altered their path before they could choose it for themselves? This reframes our entire journey from one of seeking parents to one of preparing for parenthood. We are no longer the child knocking on the door of a galactic community, hoping to be let in. We are the ones who must build the house and establish its rules. The profound loneliness of the great silence transforms from a mystery to be solved into a mantle to be worn. It is a quiet that awaits our first words, our first decisions. This is not a burden of despair, but one of breathtaking potential. It means the universe has handed us a blank page. The ethics of cosmic stewardship, the very concept of a zoo or a sanctuary, is not something we must discover written in the stars. It is something we must invent with wisdom, with compassion, and with a humility born from understanding our own violent and beautiful history. We have the chance to learn from our own scars, to take the lessons of our conflicts and our environmental struggles, and codify them into a principle for the cosmos. To become the kind of elder civilization we once dreamed might be watching over us. That is the ultimate test hidden within the silence. It asks if we are mature enough not just to find others, but to become the others we hope to find. The zoo hypothesis remains unproven, yet its power endures. It is a lens, not a photograph, a way of seeing our cosmic solitude not as an empty void, but as a stage of deliberate, protected growth. We have followed a thread from Fermi's haunting question through the quiet ethics of non-interference, past the potential triggers for contact, and into the deep philosophical currents where free will and destiny collide. Whether this idea is a literal truth about our galaxy or merely a powerful metaphor for our own potential, its ultimate challenge is the same. It asks us to grow up. It demands that we look beyond our ancient quarrels and see humanity as a single project, a fragile spark with a shared future. The theory pushes us to explore not as conquerors, but as careful stewards, to build a civilization that values wisdom as much as it does power. The silence of the stars becomes a mirror, reflecting back the kind of species we are and the kind we could yet become. The greatest takeaway is not a definitive answer about our place in a cosmic zoo. It is the question of what we choose to do with our time within the walls of our own understanding. Will we fill our days with noise and division, or will we use this quiet, this precious isolation, to learn the lessons of unity, resilience, and curiosity that any mature intelligence must master? If this journey has expanded your view of the cosmos, share your reflections in the comments below. Subscribe for more explorations to the very edge of understanding. And whenever you look up at the night sky, do so with a sense of profound curiosity, a grounding humility, and above all, an enduring hope for the story we are all